Picture a man sitting at his kitchen table for the 15th time, writing the same letter to his son, folding it up, reading it back, and throwing it in the bin. He has done this for 2 years. He is too ashamed to send it, too scared of what comes back if he does, and he is not even sure he deserves an answer. That is the story I want to start with today, because it is the one that stayed with me longest out of everything in this batch. Welcome back, everyone. 7 stories today, and I have put the one that hit hardest right at the front, because I think you will understand why by the time we get to the end of it. Alright, first story, and this one is called I Need Advice on How to Apologize to My Son for Kicking Him Out for Being Gay. So the man writing this post, let us call him David, is 49 years old, and he starts the post by saying something that I think is genuinely brave to admit publicly. 11 years ago, he was a deeply conservative Christian, the kind who went to church every Sunday and looked forward to it, the kind who believed, fully and without question, that the rules of his faith were the right way to live and the right framework through which to raise a family. He was not a bad man in his own mind. He thought he was a good father, a loving one, a righteous one. His son Lucas was 16 when he was outed, and David reacted the way he says you would expect a conservative Christian father to react, with anger, with certainty that he was doing the right thing. He forced Lucas into conversion therapy, knowing now that it never works because it simply cannot, but believing at the time that Lucas was not trying hard enough when it failed. He told his younger children that Lucas had chosen a sinful lifestyle and needed to find his way back to God on his own. He kicked him out of the house. And then, he never contacted him again. Lucas was 16 years old. He had nowhere to go, and David did not call, did not write, did not check for years. 2 years after Lucas left, David's wife died. The way she died made him start asking questions about his faith. He does not go into detail about how she passed, but he says it was the thing that cracked something open. He started researching Christianity, science, the history of the things he had believed. Over time, those beliefs shifted and then eventually crumbled. He became what he now describes as atheist. The man who would have laughed if you told him that was coming became that man, quietly, over years, sitting alone with his questions. And as his faith changed, the weight of what he had done to Lucas started pressing harder. He found his son online, found his address, found his Facebook page, and what he found there was a relief that he says he was terrified he would not find. Lucas was alive. He looked like he was doing well. He had a life. He had survived whatever the years between 16 and 27 had required of him. David starts writing letters. He writes 15 of them. He reads each one back, imagines Lucas opening it and immediately throwing it away, and then throws it away himself. He cannot make himself send it. He is too ashamed. Too aware of how inadequate any words are going to be. Too scared that reaching out will only hurt Lucas again by forcing him to relive everything. He posts asking for advice. Should he send it? What should he say? Should he even try? And in the comments, he shares the letter he has been writing, the one he keeps throwing away. And I want to take time with this because it is important. He addresses it to Lucas directly. He says he does not know where to begin and that he has written this many times, but it never seems good enough. Then he tells him something that Lucas may not know. His mother was diagnosed with ALS and died 9 years ago. David never told him. He writes that he is really sorry for not telling him and for robbing him of the chance to say goodbye to his own mother. He sits with that for a sentence before moving on, not rushing past it, acknowledging what it actually was. Then he explains that his wife's death made him question his faith, and that after years of research, he no longer considers himself religious. He says he knows it may be very hard for Lucas to believe, and he is right, it probably is. Then he writes the apology itself. He says that at the time, he did what he thought was right for the family, and then immediately says that does not change the fact that what he did was unforgivable. He writes that he made Lucas go through something that he now understands is closer to torture than to counseling. He writes that it breaks his heart to think of what Lucas may have had to do to survive after being put on the streets at 16. He says no one deserves what Lucas went through because of him. and then he leaves the door open without demanding anything. He says if Lucas never wants contact, that is fine. If he only wants contact with his brothers and sisters but not with David, that is fine. If it takes years, that is fine. He says he wants to be part of Lucas's life again, but that if Lucas does not want that, he completely understands. He says there is no excuse for what he has done, and that even if Lucas can forgive him, he does not think he can ever forgive himself. He says he has known he should have sent this letter for years, but has been too ashamed. He ends by saying he loves him, that he will do whatever Lucas wants, even if that means never reaching out again. Before sending the letter, David decides he needs to tell his other children the truth. He invites them all to dinner and sits them down. It is a painful conversation with a lot of tears, but the truth has been kept from them for 11 years, and it needs to come out. They all want to write their own letters to Lucas, so they bundle them together, include everyone's contact information so that Lucas would not have to go through David to reach his siblings if he did not want to, and send them all at once. David does not know what to expect. He tells himself not to hope for too much. He tries to prepare himself for silence, or for something that comes back full of anger, and he would understand it if it did. The following Sunday, the whole family has dinner together, an old habit of theirs. Nobody has heard from Lucas yet. They talk about how overwhelming it must be to receive a bundle of letters from an estranged family with no warning. How he probably needs time. The doorbell rings in the middle of dinner. David's oldest daughter goes to answer it. She comes back with Lucas standing behind her. He had not written a letter back. He had not called. He had just gotten in his car and driven an hour and a half to his father's house because he could not figure out what words to use, and this seemed like the only way. David describes the moment of seeing his son walk in and not knowing what to do. His other children all got up to hug Lucas immediately. David stood there with tears in his eyes, half expecting to be yelled at, half expecting to be told to go to hell, which he would have deserved. But Lucas walked past his siblings and hugged him. And David broke down completely. And Lucas started crying too. And the whole family just stood there crying for a while before anyone could actually speak. They talked for hours. Lucas told them about his life from the day he left home, and David writes that it was very difficult to hear, but that he needed to. He found out that his sister, David's sister, had been in contact with Lucas quietly after he left. She had been the one to tell him his mother had died. She had sent him money when she could. She had been the link that kept him from disappearing entirely. David went to her house the next day with flowers and cake and asked how much money she had sent over the years and offered to pay it back. She refused. He says he will just have to get her very nice birthday presents for the rest of her life. After a couple of hours, the family went outside, and David and Lucas talked, just the two of them. And Lucas forgave him. He said it would take a long time to really trust him again. He said he had been angry for years and was tired of carrying it and was ready to try to build something. He drove home about an hour after that conversation. He texted David when he got there. He told his siblings he would come for Sunday dinner when he had time. David ends the update by saying he knows he does not deserve this. He knows he does not deserve forgiveness or a relationship with his son. But he had a small hope that it might happen, and it did. And he is going to let Lucas lead everything, go at whatever pace Lucas wants, and that Lucas is always welcome whenever he feels ready. I think the reason this story hits the way it does is because it is not a simple redemption arc. David is not redeemed. He made a catastrophic decision when his child needed him most, and that decision had consequences for Lucas that nobody outside of Lucas can fully understand. What the story is actually about is a man who changed, slowly, genuinely, and then had to sit with what he had done during the years he was becoming someone better. Had to write 15 letters and throw them all away. Had to find his son on the internet and feel relief that he was still alive. Had to reckon with the fact that his teenage child had to survive on the street because of his beliefs. And the thing that David's sister did, quietly staying in contact, sending money, making sure Lucas knew someone in that family still existed for him. That is as important as anything else in this story. She was the thread. Without her, the gap might have been impossible to close. Luke deciding to just get in the car instead of writing words is also the kind of thing that I think you cannot plan for as the person waiting. David prepared himself for silence, and instead his son drove an hour and a half and rang the doorbell. Alright, second story, and this one is completely different in tone. In fact, it starts with one of the best twists I have read in a long time. This one is called, "My husband is stealing my clothes and I do not know why." So Emma is 28. She has been married to her husband Jake for almost 4 years. Emma has a metabolic disorder she was born with that causes her to have severe depression, and it is something she is very open about in the post. She explains that because of it, there are times when she genuinely struggles to care about her life, which in turn means she stops caring about her appearance. So when she finds a piece of clothing that she actually loves, when something cuts through that fog and makes her feel good about how she looks, it is a genuinely significant thing. It is not just a shirt. It is evidence that she is still in there somewhere. She gets a new shirt that she loves. Oversized, casual, exactly her style. She shows it to Jake and he tells her he likes it. She wears it regularly. And then one day, she goes to put it on and it is gone. She tears the house apart looking for it. She has just done laundry. She knows it should be somewhere. Nothing. The next morning, she is in the car with Jake and she spots it in the back seat. She asks why it is there. He says he does not know. She is confused but lets it go. A couple of weeks later, she falls in love with 2 more shirts, buys both of them in different colors, shows them to Jake. He says he likes them. And then, both of them go missing. She remembers the previous shirt appearing in Jake's car, so when he gets home from work, she goes to check. The trunk of the car. Both shirts. And when she opens the trunk, there is not just those 2. There is an entire bag full of her clothes that have gone missing over recent weeks. She goes inside and asks him what is going on. He denies knowing what she is talking about. She shows him the ring camera footage of him carrying a bag of her clothes out to the car. He watches the footage of himself on camera doing this and then says, "Oh yeah, I think you told me you wanted to donate that stuff." Emma tells him she has never in her life asked him to donate her clothes. She always handles that herself, always sorts and takes them personally. He just says, "Yeah, I do not know then." She posts asking what to do because he will not tell her the real reason he is taking her clothes. The comments immediately go dark. People tell her this is gaslighting, that he is taking the things that make her feel good about herself, that a man who does this has deep controlling intentions and this is only the beginning, that she needs to protect herself. The post blows up. Emma did not expect the response. She writes in a comment that she plans to confront him with the ring camera footage and get a real answer. She says her husband has always been a good and loving man, and this would be very out of character if it were malicious. But she acknowledges the gaslighting was real, and she is going to demand an explanation. 10 days later, the update arrives. She gathers the footage and shows it to him again. He looks at it and says, "Okay, I will just tell you. I did not want you to think I was a horrible husband." He had been taking her favorite clothes to a photographer. He had been quietly collecting the things she loved and worn the most, noting them every time she told him she liked something, because his memory is so bad and so many of her clothes look similar that he was scared he would forget which ones were the favorites if he waited until closer to the actual appointment. His plan was to surprise her with a professional photo shoot wearing all the clothes she felt most herself in. He wanted her to have those photos to look at on the days when the depression makes it hard to feel anything, when caring about her own existence feels impossible. He wanted her to have something to look back at and see herself clearly. That was why he was taking the clothes. That was the whole reason. Emma tears up. She then asks him why he gaslit her when she found the shirt in the car that first time. He says he genuinely could not think of anything else in the moment when he was put on the spot and really wanted to keep it a surprise. He apologizes multiple times and says he should have handled it differently. She forgives him. She tells him that if it ever happens again without an explanation, she will not be so understanding. He agrees, says there will not be a next time. The photo shoot appointment is the next day. She says she is actually really excited. She has never had a professional photo shoot before. She ends by asking everyone to go take some cute photos of themselves because everyone deserves to be reminded of their beauty. I love this story specifically because of how it was set up. The Ring camera footage, the denial, the donation excuse, all the structural pieces of a genuinely frightening story about a controlling partner. The comments going dark, everyone warning her, and then the actual explanation being one of the most quietly tender things I have read in a long time. A man with a bad memory who did not know where else to put her clothes, so put them in his car trunk, caught on camera, lying badly because he wanted her to have photos of herself for the hard days. The part that really stays with me is the reason he said he was doing it. Not just that she looked beautiful, which would have been kind enough on its own, but specifically because he wanted her to have something to look at when the depression makes it hard to believe she matters. He was paying attention to what she needed in a way that she did not even know she needed.
That is not nothing. All right, third story. This one also has an escape at the center of it, but the circumstances are completely different. This one is called, "Am I overreacting if I just go on holiday and not come back?" The person writing this post is 28 years old. They are closeted, gay, and currently living with their 73-year-old Jehovah's Witness mother. They share rent responsibilities, do half the cleaning and laundry, organize and prepare all the meals, and generally care for a woman who can and has physically dragged them around by the hair as an adult. They write about this with a kind of measured carefulness that tells you a lot about how long they have been living inside this situation. They explain their mother's history of trauma, their father's abuse, the context that made her who she is. They are careful not to call it abuse outright for most of the post. They say their mother is not abusive, she just can be hard to deal with. And then, in the same paragraph, they describe their mother hosed them down in the shower while punching them in the ribs after grabbing them by the hair, and say this was their fault for grabbing her hands to stop her from pushing past them. They say there were no visible bruises, so it was not really abuse. She was just a deeply traumatized old lady, and they triggered her. This is what years of living inside a dynamic like this does to the way you describe it. Their siblings are all no or low contact with the mother, which they understand and respect. They are the only one left. Their mother screams regularly about how nobody cares about her, how everyone would be happier if she died. She gives long rants about how worldly people are disgusting and how glad she is that Jehovah is going to cleanse the earth of them soon. She also, when she senses her child is thinking of leaving, physically blocks the door with her body, takes their keys, manhandles them to stop them from getting out. And then, in the same breath, she tells them they do not seem very happy and they should find their own place to live. But they know that in practice, if they try to actually do that, she will bar the door. She says it to shut them up. And it works. In March, the person is scheduled to go on holiday with their sister. They write asking whether it would be overreacting to pack an extra bag and just not come home. The comments are emphatic. Leave. Use the trip as the exit. Line up somewhere to stay before you go. Move important documents ahead of time. Do not tell her in advance. This is textbook abuse and you are allowed to leave. The person pushes back gently on some of the stronger characterizations, still protecting their mother in their framing. But they are listening and they go. The update arrives roughly 3 months later. They are safe. They have moved out. They have their own place. The post has the energy of someone who has just exhaled for the first time in years. They describe themselves as a free person, with a reference to a fictional freed house elf that I think anyone who has ever finally gotten out of something suffocating will understand immediately. But the situation with the family is messy in the aftermath. Their mother called the police to report a missing person. Someone, either the mother or one of their sisters, told police that the person has learning difficulties and is technically a vulnerable adult, which they specifically did not say was true, and which reads as an attempt to get authorities to bring them home. They include screenshots of the texts that came in during this period, and they are a portrait of the exact dynamic they described in the original post. The mother texts are initially calm, asking if everything is okay. Then they escalate to, "Please come home." Then, "Please let me know where you are." Or "Your clothes are here." Within a couple of hours, the police are texting, One of the sisters texted saying the way they handled leaving was not very nice, that the mother had been caring for them for such a long time and it came as a shock, that she was not surprised the mother called the police, given how poorly they handled things. The person's response to that is simply, "I am 28 years old." They note that one of their sisters, who had previously seemed neutral, was telling another sister behind their back that they have learning difficulties and are a vulnerable adult, and this is why they did not share their new address with her either. The comments in the update are from people who grew up in Jehovah's Witness households, people who have left abusive parents quietly, people who recognize every single detail of what was described. One commenter writes that what the person described is textbook abuse, and many other forms of abuse leave no visible marks on the body. Another says their therapist once told them that abusive people are only abusive some of the time, because if they were abusive all the time, you would realize they were abusive. The person ends by saying they are hoping to go to trades college now that they do not have to worry about their mum blowing up at the mere mention of their plans. Just that sentence. That they can now think about their future without calculating how she will react. That is what freedom looks like after a long time without it. What I keep coming back to in this story is how carefully they framed everything in the original post. The way they bent over backwards to provide context for every difficult behavior. The way they said it was not really abuse because there were no visible bruises. The way they said the incident where she was punched and hosed down was their fault for grabbing her mother's hands. None of that framing came from nowhere. You learn to talk about the people who hurt you that way when you love them, and when you have been living inside the justifications for so long that they feel like facts. The sister who said they handled the leaving poorly by not giving notice. The mother who called the police and told them her 28-year-old child was a vulnerable adult. The way the text messages escalate from checking in to demanding to guilting in the span of 2 hours. That is the real portrait of what this person walked away from. They are 28. They are safe. They are going to trade college. Okay, fourth story, and this one has one of the more chaotic weddings updates I have seen in a while, and it ends with someone eating 40 chicken nuggets alone in a McDonald's parking lot at 2 in the morning. This one is called, "Am I the asshole for dropping out of my best friend's wedding?" So the person writing this, let us call her Sarah, is 29. Her best friend Maggie is 27. They met at work 4 years ago when Maggie trained her. They clicked immediately. They have stayed close, but it is the kind of closeness that fits around busy lives, which means they mostly see each other at work and text a couple of times a day, sharing stories about their crafts or pets. They both acknowledge they use the term best friend loosely, because while they do not hang out the way most people picture best friends hanging out, they are genuinely all each other has. A few weeks before the original post, Maggie shows up at Sarah's house to ask her to be maid of honor. She knocked on the door, asked, got a yes, and immediately turned around and got back in her car. Left, just like that. Maggie called later and Sarah was thrilled, but immediately flagged something important. She is a stay-at-home mom with a second child she had last year. She has no income of her own. She can contribute time and effort, but financially she is very limited, and she needed Maggie to know that up front before committing to anything that would require significant money from her. Maggie said, no problem. She was also asking her sister to be a co-maid of honor, and she would handle the financial side of things. The wedding is for this year, which means venue hunting has been difficult on short notice. They find a place several hours away. The wedding is on a Sunday, and they want to rent an Airbnb for the wedding party members who need to stay overnight because of the distance or the drinking. Maggie sends a message to the wedding group chat asking everyone to contribute $200 each toward the Airbnb. Sarah messages her privately, again, to explain that she is not going to be staying overnight because her children have school Monday morning, and that even if she were staying, she simply does not have that money, and that Maggie had been made aware of this from the very beginning. Maggie responds by telling Sarah she is making the wedding harder without even meaning to. When Sarah pushes back and asks how she can be bad with money she does not earn, Maggie accuses her of being bad with money and ends the conversation. Sarah texts her and says she thinks it is best to step down as maid of honor because she clearly cannot do what Maggie needs. That this is not Maggie's fault, but it is not exactly hers either. Maggie calls her screaming.
tells her she is a bad friend and a piece of work for abandoning her on her wedding day. Sarah finally goes off. She tells Maggie that if she is a bad friend for this, then Maggie is a bad friend for putting her in the situation in the first place. She tried to explain the problem early on, and Maggie insisted she take the role anyway. She hangs up first and cries. The internet is overwhelmingly on Sarah's side. 3 days later, the update. And it is not what anyone expected. Sarah had given it a few days because, despite everything, she knows Maggie is a good person who has never let her down in 4 years. Something is clearly wrong beyond just wedding stress. She was hoping for an apology, but instead, at 4 in the morning, there is a knock on her door. Maggie is standing there, severely intoxicated, and looking like she has just been in a fight. Actually, like she has been in a fight. Sarah lets her in, figures out where she has been and what happened through the haze of the conversation, puts her to bed on the couch. In the morning, Maggie's fiancé James turns up because he had been trying to reach her all night. He explains that Maggie had left after dinner with his parents and he could not get in contact with her. Later that afternoon, Maggie calls Sarah with an apology for showing up at the door, but not yet for the Airbnb situation. Sarah decides to just let her talk because she clearly needs to vent, and it all comes out. James's mother, Karen, had essentially been running a campaign behind the scenes to control the wedding. She had been telling Maggie that all costs associated with the wedding were the bridal party's responsibility to cover, which is not true, which is where that Airbnb expectation came from. Karen had also, without telling anyone, canceled 4 vendor contracts the couple had already paid for because she refused to let them pay for those things, presumably wanting to use financial leverage to control the decisions. This was on top of several other incidents over the preceding months. The dinner the previous night was the final straw. James apparently spoke up and said that it was his fiancée's wedding and her opinion was what mattered. Karen did not take this well. Things escalated. Karen grabbed Maggie by the hood when she tried to leave, and then they were in a full bar brawl. Maggie has a black eye, a scratch running almost the length of her arm. Her nose is bruised. Sarah had not seen any of it in the dark and through the ruined makeup the night before. Maggie apologizes for the way she spoke to Sarah and for letting Karen influence her as much as she did. They talk everything through. James comes over, they open a bottle of wine. There is crying and cackling. They play a board game. It ends up being one of the better evenings they have had together in a while. And James and Maggie have gone no contact with Karen. The detail that Sarah adds, almost as an afterthought, is one of my favorites. Between when Maggie left the restaurant and when she showed up at Sarah's door at 4 in the morning, there were roughly 6 unaccounted hours. Where was she? She had walked to a McDonald's, ordered 40 chicken nuggets, and sat in the parking lot eating them by herself. Sarah says she is terrified by this detail and angry that Maggie did not come to her sooner. But she also admits, looking back, it is a funny detail. What this story actually turned out to be about is not the maid of honor situation at all. It is about a woman being slowly ground down by her future mother-in-law in the months leading up to her wedding, and not saying anything to her fiancé or her friends about how bad it had gotten, because she was trying to handle it herself. By the time Sarah got that screaming phone call, Maggie had already been quietly absorbing months of interference and manipulation from Karen. The Airbnb demand, the way she went off, that was not really about Sarah at all. It was the overflow from everything else. And James stepping up at that dinner table and saying it was his fiancée's wedding and her opinion was what mattered. That apparently was the thing that broke the dam. Maggie finally felt defended. And then it all came apart at once. Sarah ends by saying she is back in as maid of honor. She is very excited about the wedding now. They are all better off without Karen in the picture. 5th story. And this one I have covered before on this channel, but there is a brand new update that changes the shape of it, and I think it is worth going through in full. This is called "My Former Pastor Defended Larry Nassar in a Pre-Sermon Rant About the Winter Olympics, and My Parents Are Relaying His Message to My Brother." For anyone who needs the background, Larry Nassar was the Team USA women's gymnastics doctor who spent over 2 decades sexually abusing hundreds of young athletes under the guise of medical treatment. He was convicted in 2018 and sentenced to up to 360 years in prison.
His victims included some of the most celebrated gymnasts in American history. Some were as young as 6 years old. So the person writing this, let us call him Marcus, is 23. He does not live with his parents anymore, but comes home for visits, and the rule has always been that if he stays on a Sunday, he attends church with the family. It is a non-denominational church his very religious parents attend. He has a 12-year-old brother who still lives at home, and who Marcus is genuinely worried about in terms of what he is being exposed to. He went home for the Super Bowl, helped set up the party, stayed over. On Sunday, he went to church. The pastor's sermon that day started with an aside about the Winter Olympics. Not about athletes making political statements, which Marcus notes would have been more expected given the pastor's history. Instead, the pastor talked about figure skating and gymnastics uniforms. He said female figure skating outfits were revealing and led to lust. He called the style of gymnastics uniforms normalized pornography. He said he would never allow his own daughter to wear a skirt as short as a gymnastics uniform outside of that sporting context. He said the uniforms allowed creepy men to watch with lustful intentions and not be questioned because it had been normalized. He brought up a rule change that now allows gymnasts to wear shorts over their uniform, which he supported and said he would have required his daughter to wear at all times. And then he said the thing that is the actual sinner of this story. He said it was unfortunate that the rule change happened after Larry Nassar's case, because no one wanted to point out the inappropriate uniforms Nassar was forced to be around. He said many of the victims were playing the victim because society allowed them to. He said Nassar maybe would not have done what he did if not for the uniforms. Parts of this received applause from the congregation, including from Marcus's parents. Marcus describes it as the pastor telling on himself. He raises the question of why, in 2026, a pastor randomly brings up a case from 2017 about a sports doctor who abused children in the context of athletic uniforms. Not from a place of horror or condemnation, from a place of sympathy and deflection. The framing that the uniforms were the cause, that the victims were playing the victim, that the real problem was what Nassar was forced to be around. On the drive home, Marcus said he thought the message was harmful. His parents disagreed. They took the purity perspective. His mother began planning to tell a cousin's parents about the uniform rule change. Marcus left before the party. His father called him, told him it was disrespectful to leave early when they had let him stay over despite his help setting up. Marcus refused to apologize. His father then told him he was banned from next year's party. Marcus, in what he describes as malicious compliance, left a public review of the church explaining exactly why he would never attend again, including a link to the YouTube video of the sermon with a timestamp. He made an Instagram story linking to the same. He said if the church deletes the video, it will only draw more attention to why it disappeared. The second update arrives after the pastor brings up the Olympics a second time 3 weeks later at a church Marcus was not attending. Marcus found out through his 12-year-old brother, who told him on the phone that he already knew what their parents were like and did not need the explanation. He is a smart kid. This time the pastor had watched the figure skating gala, which is a non-competitive showcase event at the end of the Olympics with fewer restrictions, and decided to give a second sermon about it. He criticized specific routines. He called it worse than the regular competition because of the fewer rules. He admitted watching the gala he had previously told the congregation to turn off. Marcus's father's explanation for this was that the pastor had an obligation to watch things in order to warn his flock, the same way a parent might preview a film before showing their children. And then the pastor added something in the second sermon that he had not said in the first. He said the parents of Nassar's victims should have been tried alongside him for allowing their daughters to wear those uniforms. That also received applause. Marcus gave his father one condition for an apology. Tell someone outside the church, someone from a different congregation, what the pastor said, and phrase it as your own view too. His father said there was no reason to do that. Marcus asked why not if he genuinely believed it. His father said Marcus did not understand how arguments worked. Now the new update, which arrived in early April. Marcus's father, after weeks of being ignored, began telling relatives that Marcus was not actually upset about the sermon, that the real reason Marcus was angry was because he felt convicted, meaning guilty, about having questionable content on his own devices. He is gaslighting Marcus to his extended family,
inventing a different reason for the conflict that makes Marcus look like the problem. Marcus had to explain the actual situation to multiple relatives individually. Not all of them believed him. He eventually made a Facebook post with the full story and links to the time-stamped sermon videos. He still received negative comments from relatives who sided with his parents. His parents have since stopped answering his calls. The relatives who reached out on their behalf were not receptive. Marcus says he is done trying to call them and is now blocking a significant number of people. He ends by saying he cannot believe that disagreeing with someone who defends Larry Nassar has become a controversial position in his family, and that if his father genuinely believed he had questionable content on his devices, he would file a report rather than gossip about it to relatives. The fact that he is gossiping tells you everything about whether he actually believes it. The thing about this story that I think is important to name directly is the pattern. The pastor made an argument that sexual abuse of children was caused by what the children were wearing. This is the same argument that has been used to deflect accountability for abuse for decades. It transfers the moral weight from the person who committed the act to the victim or to the circumstances around the victim. And when Marcus objected to that in a church context, in a family context, the response was not to engage with why it might be harmful. It was to question his motives for objecting and eventually to fabricate an alternative explanation for his behavior entirely. His 12-year-old brother is still in that house, still attending that church, and Marcus is on the outside of it now, watching and unable to do much. Alright, this next one is the kind of story that sounds like a small domestic thing and turns out to have a genuinely warm ending. This one is called, "Would I be the asshole for asking my husband to stop cooking most nights?" The person writing this is a lawyer who runs her own company.
She recently had a baby who was born prematurely and has some issues with feeds that meant their pediatrician recommended delaying daycare until he hit 6 months. Her company extended her leave to cover the additional time. She felt sad about this. She is someone whose identity is deeply connected to her work and to the company she built, and being away from it, even with a beautiful reason for being away from it, feels like a loss. Her husband is, by her account, extraordinary. He is a full and present parent who loves being a father. When they are both home, they split childcare and household tasks fairly, one on baby duty while the other handles everything else. But his version of handling everything else is cooking. Elaborate, restaurant-quality cooking. He loves it. It is his safe space. He spends an hour or sometimes more creating meals that he is genuinely passionate about. Before the baby, this was wonderful. Now it means that when he comes home from work and takes his hour in the kitchen, she is doing childcare for that hour. And after a full day alone with a fussy, premature baby who requires constant attention and special care with feeds, an extra hour of sole childcare feels enormous. She also mentions the grocery situation. Her husband loves the process of meal planning and going to the grocery store on the weekend. She asked if they could order groceries instead. He agreed, but she can tell he is bummed because the delivery shoppers do not pick out ingredients with the same care he does. She feels guilty even framing it as a problem. He is not out drinking, he is not gaming for hours. He is providing beautiful food for his family and genuinely finding joy in it. She does not want to take that from him. But she is exhausted and needs a break and does not quite know how to say it. She posts asking if she is crazy, if this is just the hormones and the sleep deprivation talking. The comments are thoughtful. People suggest compromises rather than asking him to stop entirely. 1 or 2 pot meals on weeknights, 1 elaborate cook on weekends, more frozen meal nights to balance it out. She mentions in the comments that he is actually reading the responses with her in real time and agrees with a commenter who suggests scaling back rather than stopping. The update comes the next day. She sent him the posts and he was impressed with the comments and found it funny that she had needed to post at all. He laughed until she burst into tears, which tells you a lot about how much she had been holding. He just had not realized how much she needed a break. They worked out a simple arrangement. He cooks twice during the week, but on those nights, she takes an hour to herself. Bath, yoga, book, something just for her. They meal prep on Sunday together, so his weeknight cooking does not run over an hour. Saturday becomes his elaborate cook day, 2 or 3 hour dishes, his creative outlet with real space around it.
The other nights are frozen meals or takeout. He will still order most groceries online, but will go to the farmer's market on Saturdays for specific fresh produce and spices for his special Saturday cook. Someone in the comments suggested this middle ground, and he loved it. She ends by saying she is going to take a bath that evening while he cooks, that she is grateful for the advice, that sometimes all you need is to ask for what you need. The update 3 months later adds something new to the story. She is back at work. Her husband took leave and became the primary caregiver and realized he loved it. He is good at it in a way that looks effortless from the outside. She gets photos throughout the day of him taking the baby on adventures. She comes home to incredible meals and packed lunches for the next day. She feels like a better mother and wife because she comes home completely refreshed. She wonders in the post whether this could become something more permanent.
He joked that he had found his dream job. She makes significantly more than he does, and financially they could manage without his salary. She wants to bring it up but is scared of coming across as a hypocrite because she could not do the stay-at-home role herself, but is hoping he will want to. The last update is almost a year after the original post. It is posted in a different community, the Happy Marriages community. She is in a depression related to the political climate affecting her legal work. Her hours are long. Her husband has picked up the slack. He has been running baths for her, taking the baby out so she can sleep, buying her a book she mentioned wanting. She is not posting to vent. She is posting to ask how to show appreciation for a partner who keeps showing up. What small things can she do to let him know she notices? The comments suggest flowers, baking something, a Spotify playlist, a coffee subscription, signing him up for a race to support his running habit. She adds brownies to the shopping cart while she is reading the responses. She says she will try to do one small thing a day from the list. It is a genuinely beautiful portrait of a marriage that keeps figuring itself out. Every post in this saga is about two people who are willing to say out loud what is not working and then actually fix it together. She was embarrassed to say she needed a break from his cooking. He was surprised she had needed to post rather than just ask. And the thing that made it work is exactly that when she said it, he heard it. Second to last story, and this one involves a baby sister, a debt ledger, and one of the most satisfying move-out updates I have read in a while. This one is called, "Am I the asshole for not wanting to babysit my baby sister for free?" So the person writing this, let us call her Maya, is 17. She is in her final year of school in New Zealand. Her mother had her young and was a single parent for most of Maya's childhood. They are very close because of that. Her mum has since remarried an actual lovely man who treated Maya as his own from the start, and who had wanted a biological child of his own. Her mum agreed to try, with the condition that they get married first. They did. They got pregnant. Maya's baby sister was born 9 months before the post. She is now 17, and her sister is 9 months old. Maya loves her sister. She loves kids in general and has a background working with children and being around a big extended family full of them. She is very clear about that from the start because she does not want the post to come across as her not wanting to be around her sister. She does. The problem is that from the moment her mum got pregnant, her parents have been joking about their built-in babysitter. And then the jokes started becoming less like jokes. Now, here is what Maya already does in this household without being asked. She is the primary cook. She makes nearly every dinner and is expected to be home in time to cook unless she has youth group. She is responsible for all the dishes every day, coming home after school to find the lunch dishes from her parents' day waiting in the sink, coming home from youth group at 10 at night to do all the dinner dishes before bed while her parents are already asleep. She cleans the entire house every week. She has heaps of commitments, church involvement, school leadership, a week at a time away at kids' camps during school holidays. She is in her final year and doing well academically. She describes herself as a social butterfly who is rarely home. None of this is disputed. Her parents are supportive of her being busy, love that she has so much going on, and never make it an issue. The issue is her free time when she is at home. She wants to spend it in her room watching a movie, reading, chatting to friends. And increasingly, her parents are making comments that she should be doing more with the baby, more than just hanging out with her when she happens to be in the shared spaces, specifically babysitting, meaning clearing her schedule to take sole charge of feeding, changing, entertaining, all of it.
Maya draws a distinction. She used to work professionally as a babysitter. She invested money into being qualified for it. If her parents want that level of care from her, they should pay her, even a small amount, even just a bit of pocket money. If they want her to hang out with her sister when she is around anyway, that is different, and she is already doing it and enjoys it. Her parents also give her nothing financially beyond food and the roof over her head. Anything extra she pays for herself. They keep a notes page tracking her debts. School paid for by parents? Debt noted. Camp fees? Debt noted. $10 borrowed because she did not have cash? Debt noted. She pays everything back. She is moving out as soon as she finishes school and already has an internship with on-site housing lined up. Her parents are actively excited about this. They are helping her plan it. She just wants to know whether she is overreacting about the babysitting expectation before she leaves. The internet tells her she is not overreacting. She adds clarifications in a follow-up. The debt ledger was put in place to teach her money management. Her parents are not strict enforcers. They round things off and negotiate. Her mum has never forced her to do night feeds or anything beyond what she chooses. She has traveled widely and independently, and her parents support this. It is a complicated household with real warmth in it alongside the frustrating dynamics. 9 months later, the update arrives. She is 18. Her sister is 1.5. She moved out a month after turning 18 and went straight into the internship she had lined up. She lives in a flat with a roommate she describes as amazing, who is a few years older.
Her relationship with her parents has actually improved since moving out.
She visits every couple of weeks, about an hour away. Her sister is the cutest thing ever, and she loves going over for a big cuddle. She has an amazing group of co-workers who go on adventures together. She has a boyfriend her parents love. She ends with, "God bless everyone and Happy Easter." What I appreciate about this story is how honestly Maya describes her own family. She does not present them as villains. She explicitly says she did not include all the amazing things about her parents in the post, and she knows it. The debt ledger started as a tool to help her with money management, and she can see the logic in it, even if it feels excessive sometimes. Her mum is doing the best she can with what she has and comes from a genuinely difficult background herself. The cooking and cleaning expectations come from a cultural context that is real. And yet, a 17-year-old in her final year of school who cooks every dinner, does all the dishes, including the ones left by adults who are home all day, cleans the whole house every week, and is expected to spend her free time caring for an infant rather than resting, that is too much. The fact that she can contextualize it does not make it too much less. She moved out the month she turned 18. She has a job and a flat and a boyfriend and friends she goes on adventures with. She visits her sister regularly. Everything her parents were worried about losing access to when she left is still there in a healthier form. Last story today, and this one I want to take my time with because it has the most updates, and together they tell a story about a person becoming themselves for the first time at 28. This one is called, "Am I Overreacting for Just Going on Holiday and Not Coming Back?" Oh wait, I already covered that one. Let me do the correct last story. Actually, let me cover the pastor story update properly as the final one since I merged things above. Actually, I realize I already covered all 7 stories. Let me end properly. And that is going to do it for today. 7 stories, genuinely one of my favorite batches in a while. A father who threw 15 letters away before finally sending one. A husband collecting his wife's favorite clothes in his car trunk for the most tender reason imaginable. A 28-year-old who went on holiday and simply did not come home. A wedding that nearly destroyed a 4-year friendship until a bar brawl with a future mother-in-law clarified everything. A pastor who decided a gymnastics event was the right occasion to defend a convicted predator. A couple who keep figuring out their marriage one honest conversation at a time. And a 17-year-old in New Zealand who moved out at 18 and has not looked back since. Drop a comment on whichever one stayed with you the most. I always read them. I will see you in the next one.